The suffering you're going through is not necessarily bad. Now, look, I've spent hundreds of hours cross diving into various different religious texts, whether it's the books, scriptures, quotes, philosophers, theologians, whatever it may be. And really, at the end of the day, there is some truth behind all the suffering that you're going through, which actually contextualizes into something more greater and meaningful versus what you may be going through right now. Now, obviously, when you're in the pain of the moment with all this like mental baggage you're going through, or whether it's you're going through some sort of problem in real life, whether it's with like finances or it's through relationships, whatever it may be, and this can be severely causing a mental toll on your health, right? On your mentality, on your well-being. And how can it possibly be any other way other than pain, right? What all like this ancient text and everything reveals is that there's actually something more deeper behind it, which is actually good for you. But you may not be clearly seeing it in the moment now, but when you look back in hindsight, it may actually be one of the greatest gifts you can possibly have. And there's a reason behind what this actually suffering can mean for you. Now, when it comes to suffering, what it really means is that you are hiding away from truth, I guess you can say, right? Because when all is going well, when everything is fine in your life, there is no suffering, right? Whether it's the mental or physical or whatever it may be. And there's only suffering when there's some sort of problem in our life, particularly in areas that require growth. And when you look at it from this way, because remember that there could be states or just like points in time in your life where everything's going fine, there's nothing wrong, and everything's going well. However, when maybe a person enters your life, or when you start experiencing this work-life problem, or when maybe you get injured or something like that, all suffering really is just an indicator, a feedback mechanism, which tells you that there are certain areas of your life that require growth. Now, for instance, if you're feeling lonely, well, the reason you may be suffering is because you need to find more friends, or you need to find a community, whether it's online, physical, it doesn't matter, or whether you feel terrible about your health. Well, that suffering wouldn't be there. Mostly it's mental, right? It's just this mental chatter. It wouldn't be there if you were in shape, if you took care of yourself, right? Why would it be there otherwise? Or for instance, with your finances, if you don't have a budget, or if you're not earning as much as you want, or whatever it may be, that pain would not be there because, simply put, you aren't that person. But if you are the current person that you are, meaning this is why you are feeling pain in this area, all you simply have to do is figure out how to solve the problem for that specific area. Because the way you can look at it, like from what I've read from text and stuff like that, it's kind of like a purification process. It's like a cleansing process in order to renew yourself, right? They call this like the metamorphosis, where you basically shape or transition out of one stage of your life into something higher from what currently is. It's like this rebirth, this renewal. And often what happens when we're going through like these really dark periods is we start adding into our lives. And what I mean is by adding distractions, adding forms of escape, adding stimulants, adding drugs, adding different substances, adding more food into our diet, or just maybe avoiding the problem and going to, distracting ourselves with entertainment, going just anywhere away from the problem and not facing it directly. And that's not the case. That's not actually what we should be doing. Rather, we should be actually facing it. Now, how so specifically? Well, there's this great quote. I like the quote right now, and it's from Meister Eckhart. And the quote goes, "God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction." Now, what this means is that rather than adding, putting more addictions, more distractions, more entertainment onto our lives, that is not solving the problem, and hence why you feel like this burning sense in yourself that there's all this pain, there's this suffering, whatever it may be, and hence you can't really live with yourself. Now, because of that, that is not the solution, and that is not the right way to go. Rather, you want to start subtracting. I made some previous videos on just how by subtracting things from your life can simply improve your output, your well-being, your focus, all like these different other benefits you could get from it. And I even made a video quite a while ago on just addiction and stuff like that. But the thing is that when we're subtracting, you're removing. And here's another thing I'm going to tell, like how it kind of related to me. When we're removing things from our life, you're basically getting to the base default version of you. So when you have like all of these distractors, whether it's addictions, whether it's people in your life that are just taking you away from having time with yourself, you have like all like this stuff, this fluff here that gets in the way, and you can't really tell what exactly is causing the problem. But when you start removing everything, it just then becomes purely all like you, right? You know, the addiction is not the variable, you know, maybe not the person is the variable. So then it must be something within yourself. And when you go within yourself, there's probably some pattern, something going on within you that is most likely the thing you have to resolve. Now, for me, what it was when I started like reducing or just collapsing a lot of like these problems, these blockers in my life, preventing me from getting to where I want to be, or just like it was more so like a psychological thing. And for me, it was when I started like removing all like the addictions and stuff like that, I realized like at the core there was this problem with a bit of self-esteem and also self-sabotage. And keep in mind, I would have not known or figured this out if I didn't start removing things from my life. And it's kind of like also being able to think first principles, because when you think first principles, you're trying to get to the roots of the truth of something in order to fully solve it. Otherwise, with all this stuff, all these distractions, all these things getting in the way in your life, how the hell otherwise are you going to know what is the problem when you have all these different variables you have to solve for? Like, I like to have a very scientific mindset and solve for the one thing. But in order to find the one thing, you have to go back to first principles. And if you want to get the first principles, applying here with your life, for instance, if you want to fix something, you have to remove everything before you can see clearly what is the problem. And in this case, for me, it was like something with self-esteem, and it was a bit with the self-sabotaging patterns. So I've been working on that. I've been actually sharing my recent or a past newsletter maybe a week ago. By the way, if you're not subscribed to my newsletter called Insight Lab, check it out. Every week I send 3 cool insights on just amazing things I'm learning. You'll definitely find it valuable, but yeah, check it out. But anyway, I was sharing this newsletter a while ago on self-esteem, this one exercise you can do to simply reframe the thoughts and negative beliefs you're having in your life in order to basically break away from the negative self-limiting problems or just like limiting beliefs, patterns in your head, so you can actually transition to the person you want to be. So this is what I mean when you just want to start removing things from your life versus adding, because we're getting to the core of the problem to solve it. And this is why this concept is so important, because when you can just strictly or just purely get to the core essence of the problem here, which is your suffering, you can fix it that way. And all it really is just feedback. You're outgrowing your old self, and it's just like a natural way of just like building awareness around yourself, being able to read your emotions, have emotional intelligence, and being able to see what you can do with yourself. Now, since we have actually the context in place, you know, what does suffering means, what to do about it, how to actually get to the bottom of it. Now, I want to make it a little more practical and show you some tips I've learned throughout the years, throughout even just implementing myself from books, from just spiritual works and stuff like that. So here they are. This first one I want to talk about is called the letting go technique. Now, I call it the letting go technique. Well, actually, I don't even call it. It's actually from David R. Hawkins. I got it from one of his books. But the thing is, you can find this practice across like many different spiritual cultures, even religious texts, whatever. And even now, there's a lot of neuroscience behind why this works. And what you're doing is when something happens, right? When you're having this thought, this limiting belief, whatever it may be, you simply want to just observe it, and then as the thought comes, maybe it's emotion, maybe it's like this recurring theme, this pattern, this feeling, whatever. You just want to sit there and observe it. You're not labeling it. You aren't really doing anything with it. You're just letting it come and then taking note of it and letting it go. And that's it. Because the way the mind kind of works is that there's a thought, and then there's another thought, and then there's another thought, and then like these thoughts can open multiple loops and then just continue on indefinitely. But rather, when the thought comes or whatever it may be, just simply observe it, acknowledge it's there, and just let it go. And then you'll slowly start to fade. And you'll notice this with any emotion. Like sometimes, like for instance, this morning I woke up, I kind of didn't want to even make this video, but I just got into the momentum of doing it, and now it's actually flowing pretty fine, right? And the thing is, I noticed it there, and it came by this feeling of like this, I don't know if I want to call it dread, or I don't know, just I don't even know. I don't want to label it anything. But I just didn't want to really record the video earlier this morning. And yeah, the negative thought was there, like, oh, why am I doing this? All this stuff like that. And I just simply took note of it. I actually wrote down in my journal on my phone all the thoughts I'm having, and I just kind of acknowledged them there. It's even good to just externalize it onto something. Notice it there, and then I just let it go. I just moved on with my day, and actually, hey, not thinking about it anymore and just moving on. But the same thing applies to like any other emotions, any feelings you're having. Simply by just acknowledging it's there, or even like if you write about it, you produce this calming effect where it just simply starts to disappear, and you just move on and carry on with your day. So that's one technique you can use, the letting go technique. Now, another one is actually practically removing things. Now, I spoke about this, I hinted about it a little earlier, but this is what I mean. You want to get down to the core essence of who you are as just as a healthy, well-being individual. You want to remove all the distractions. You want to remove the negative, toxic people, or even set boundaries. You want to clean up diet, stop with the sodas, or even the toxic music, whatever it is that may be causing this mental suffering, or whatever it is, this pain you're going through. You just want to remove all the variables. Because A, either that is going to solve it, or B, it's going to give you clarity in order to figure out what is the root issue. And when you figure that out, then you can solve for it. Otherwise, how do you know what to solve for? So that's like the practical approach. Another way is to reframe what we're asking. And this is simply by changing your state. Because think about it. Ancients, what they talked about is that we're either operating from a higher mind or a lower mind. Now, the higher mind was always esteemed as something rational, something that is for the good, that is more noble, right? It's for the more noble people, men and women in life. Whereas for the other side was the rational or the irrational mind. It was the animalistic mind, the mind that was very short-termed, the mind that couldn't think in years, the mind that is very impulsive. When you now have like this kind of like a mental model that, oh, I'm either operating out of the rational mind or the irrational mind, you can kind of gauge like in the moment right now, like how are you feeling? Are you feeling rational, or are you feeling like you're operating from this higher self or this lower self? And when you feel like you're operating from the lower self, what you want to do is change your state by changing the questions you're asking yourself. So simply by changing the questions you're asking yourself, you can refocus on something positive and then go on and continue your day from there. Because think about it, if you're always thinking negatively, do you think you're going to be creative? Do you think you're going to be inspired to do something? Do you think you're going to be inspired to produce some great work today? Or do you even think your work is going to be of high quality? Probably not, because you're in a negative mode of thinking. So by reframing question, what you want to do is ask yourself something like, what would it look like if, right, something inspiring, or how can I become 1% happier today? And when I started really asking simple questions like that, how can I become 1% happier today? I just started finding activities that would actually make me more happy, right? So it applies for happiness, it applies for changing your state, it applies for, oh, hey, how can I do my work better? Or what area can I improve on? When you're asking yourself empowering questions like this, you're changing your focus from being something like pessimistic, something negative, and falling down that rabbit hole of chaos into something that is more empowering, enlightening, something that can actually inspire you to make some progress in any dimension of your life, right? So it's being able to change your state with asking empowering questions. And another exercise, the fourth one I'm going to mention here, is reframing the beliefs and everything going on in your head. So first off, you have to have some sort of repository in your journal or wherever it may be where you're actually collecting all the negative thoughts. So for instance, what I do is this technique called the triple column technique. And what you do here is you list all the negative thoughts you're having, and then you try to go online and search up the different sorts of cognitive distortions. Now, there's these different cognitive distortions, right? Because we either overgeneralize, we think black and white that it should be this way, or we apply shoulds, coulds, nots onto these beliefs where like, oh, I could not do that, or I should be doing this. And all these things really are, they're just distortions, right? It's just psychological distortions preventing us from, or just, they're kind of like biases. They're preventing us from seeing reality as it should be, but instead we're seeing it through how we've been programmed, right? By the algorithm, or just through society, people, and not seeing the full picture of what things can be or how we can perceive them. So once you have these cognitive distortions, then what you want to do is reframe. So you have the negative thought, you have the cognitive distortion with a thought, and then after that you want to reframe it. So if once upon a time you thought, I can't make friends, well, now how you would reframe it is be like, oh, I actually can make friends. I have made friends in the past. Making friends is easy. I can join online communities. I speak to people online all the time. I comment back to people on social medias. I actually have a few friends I'm talking to right now on my phone. So you're just kind of, what you're doing is you're stacking rocks and evidence in order to reframe that negative thought into something positive. And by simply doing this anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes a day, it's really empowering because you are training your mind to think a different way. So reframing your thoughts. And that's really it. You want to use these empowering exercises just to help relieve you of the suffering you're going through. And the thing is that life is just meant to be bliss. It is meant to be blissful. You enjoying it, you being a healthy, well-rounded individual. And the thing is, just like Seneca says, is just most of all this problem and pain we're going through is just a byproduct of our imagination. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And that's just the unfortunate truth of just being human. It's just part of the human condition. But by understanding suffering as a whole, it could be one of the most powerful tools in order to transform you into something you can be, something you want to be, something that you know is deep inside of you, right? All suffering really is just a indicator. It's a leading indicator telling you that there's something you have to fix. You have to fix it, and if you fix it, just as the ancients talk about through the different texts and stuff like that, you can truly learn how to live a blissful life, how to actually become something you'd be proud of, or just even be pain-free and happy and blissful. So with that said, hopefully you got a lot of value from this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, I mentioned it a bit earlier in the video, but subscribe to or just even check it out. Check out my newsletter called Insight Lab. Every single week you'll get 3 weekly insights on very interesting things I'm learning, finding, whether it's around productivity, self-actualization, something else, I don't know. But if you're interested in that, check it out. You won't regret it. And other than that, I'll see you in another one later.